Everything is right where I'm getting a surprise update. So
the greatest.
it's only gonna take a few minutes and everything will be right where I left it. Hey, everyone. Hey.
Hi.
Is this it?
Just bear with me on my computer's updating. There's another surprise Windows update. This is the second. Great. Called meeting to order at 6:01. Bill, you said you had a proposed adjustment to the agenda?
Yeah, we could just. John's here to talk about it.
Yeah. So I think that should be a fairly quick one. You want to just stick that first thing before the Maple Corner parking? That makes sense? Or?
Yeah, I think we can knock it in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is everybody else okay with that?
What's the item?
It's the errors and omissions from the listers, and we've got John Foley here to talk about it. We have a copy here. It looks like there are two of those. I think there was a version of it that was circulated by email earlier.
Was it just email?
Yeah, it came in today.
Mm-hmm. John, you want to give an overview while we're pulling it up? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We usually get a couple of these a year, one of these a year.
One or two.
Yeah.
They're both related to the reappraisal. The Nemrick, they were actually Nemrick's error when the list was not to accept responsibility to figure it out.
Well, thank you.
And there are, looks like there are two parcels. Has everybody found a copy of that?
Yeah. One of them knows that it's a number here and the other doesn't, but is there a
Yeah.
So fair that, and the reason for the one that is the second one that's blank for William Martin III to fill in reappraisal error number or
Nemrick had put two house sites on that parcel. House sites valued at anywhere between $100 or $155,000 in additional value. So it's not one parcel, it is one parcel. He hasn't subdivided, he only had one house site that the house joined. It's Walter and Carolyn Valentine's place. So he's not done that for. And, no, we took it out. We took that house site value off. He originally came in because there was an acreage problem. But when we opened it up and looked at it, we saw the Nemrick had put two house sites on there.
Any idea why?
No.
Okay.
No, nor do I know why. On the other one, we got a survey to show correct acreage. We changed the acreage, we reduced it down to what was correct, put a note on the list record with the date, so we changed. That's my sheets here.
Yikes.
And the reason I think there are going to be some more errors and omissions, because people might just come along and say, hey, let me take a look at my list record. And right now, the track record is not good for them, right?
So it looks like I see, and Selectboard. Okay, so we already have the signatures from the select or from the listers on the form. Does anybody else have any other questions about the errors? No. Can I get a motion to accept these adjustments submitted by the listers and have them signed by the select board members?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, so we will sign this, we're all set, thanks, John, appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot.
Thank you.
Next item on, thank you for adding that to the agenda. Next up, we have the Maple Corner parking conversation. So I think we should move into that. Jamie, how would you like to
I mean,
participate in that conversation?
so
Before I force you to participate.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm flexible. I can give some background. I think Steve will make the primary presentation on behalf of the store.
Okay,
As this moves along and there are decisions to make, I'm happy to recuse myself from decisions as that feels appropriate.
sure.
And I'm flexible, but
But knowledgeable.
right, but I feel like I can provide, it's sort of an issue I've worked on off and on for 15 plus years.
Yeah, I'm sure my decision.
Yeah, so
She's the operator.
Provide that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the operator.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, she's makes the decisions regarding the need.
So if, before we dive in, I guess I'll provide a little extra context. I was actually expecting a few more token numbers of the. Hopefully it doesn't look like we have those, but I was going to propose that we kind of work through this dialogue. I think that this is, kind of a well-established, known entity in the, certainly in the Maple Corner community, and we received I guess a handful, one complaint by email, and then more recently, and then I think that there's some known other members of the community who are finding the increased traffic a little harder to deal with, and so that kind of brings us to the present and talking about what the store has in mind and how we move forward and who's responsible for what. I think everybody is in agreement that we want to see the store thrive and be a robust kind of economic and community engine within certainly that neighborhood. But how do we do it so that the public safety isn't compromised, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So so Steve, yeah, if you want to kind of dive into what the status of thought is with the store and the store board, I guess that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. So it's a wide ranging issue, right? It's especially in July and August, as we were just discussing before the meeting started. It's particularly acute, considering all the people that come to enjoy the resources of Calais, and particularly correspond. The store definitely is a draw for people, and because of fine food, fine entertainment, all the things we've talked about. But the store's parking lot also gets used for a variety of other uses, including walkers, bikers, people going to the pond, people just walking. So it has to be a comprehensive conversation. The store definitely has its part of the responsibility. So with that being said, the preliminary proposal that you guys received basically outlines some of the steps that we would definitely take steps going forward. I would say, having been on the board for a year, within every month at the board meetings, there is not at least a section where we're talking about the parking and the parking issues, and also, more importantly, the board going all the way back to when the store became the Maple Corner Community Store, how to treat our neighbors. That's a very, very important element to every monthly board meeting that we have. It just comes up constantly. So my hat's off to Jamie and the rest of the board for that over the years. So to get right into what we're talking about expanding the parking lot. It would be to the north of the store. Currently, where the picnic table is. I think that's a maple tree there. It's right to the right of our tenant's, driveway slash, garage. And we think we can kind of excavate out there and create maybe 5 spaces right there we think we can do that reasonably and also keep the aesthetic of, the store. I'll be frank, we haven't really had deep conversations about, lines or what's the optimum parking at the Maple Corner Community Store, because on any given night or any given day, it's kind of predicated by what's happening. So, like that probably could be more of a far-reaching goal for us, but initially, I think what we'd like to do is create a little bit more space, so that's one part of it. The second part of it, you guys probably recognize that there was the old, sign for the gas pump that was out there, it's a cement. So we probably can get 2 more people with big trucks now just, park right on top of it. But there, we could, actually create space, and we think that would be another maybe 2 spaces we could get there. Although I think it's probably being used right now, to a degree. So we think we can get a total right now, and not quickly, but in process, 8 additional spaces, which would help. As far as, how we see the town being able to help us, the signs that go up, to the north, on the left-hand side, where all the big, culverts went in, on the county road, prior to making the left on the Worcester Dallas Road. Those signs, as we understand it, they're 12 feet high, because they have to be 12 feet high. And after spending a fair amount of time there, we have talked about it, it seems like we need to put signage down so that it's more eye level. We don't think people actually see those signs at all. So that's just our observation, is hanging out looking, because when you come through Maple Corner during a particularly Thursday night, Friday night, people are coming from the swim area, people are coming into the landing. That right-hand turn is particularly tough if people are parking there. So we would propose us paying for some additional signage on the 2 do not parking signs that are already there. And let me just get through this, and then we can kind of rip into this as we see fit. So where we need some potential partnership from the town would be just to the south and just to the west of the store on Kobe Heist's land and Rob and Anne Marie's. And I've spoken with Kobe, I've been trading voicemails with Rob about people already naturally park all the way up to Rob and Anne Marie's. If you guys know what I'm talking about, Rob and Anne Marie's mailbox. And what we would propose that the town do there is just make it so that it's easier for people to park there. Kobe Heist has no problem with whatsoever. I won't put words into Rob or Anne, we haven't had that conversation yet. But I guess that would be a decision for you all in terms of, you're taking a little bit of space there. I'm not sure, I'm not an expert in roads by any stretch of the imagination, but we would like to make it so that it's easier for people to identify that that's kind of the offload parking, on the right-hand side going up towards Kobe and, Rob and Anne Marie's house. And then the last piece would just be, we looked at Kent Hill over by Chris, and I've known Chris forever, but his name, I always screw up. Over there, the potential for some people naturally already parking there, but potentially creating maybe a little bit more wider road there for people to pull off. Those are kind of our initial thoughts. The store, to kind of recap, the store would expand, create, and then maybe make it for those overflow nights and days a little bit easier for people to park on the side of the road with the town's assistance. And then the other piece would be another sign so that people aren't in sort of that naturally blocking area right there. That's what I've got. Anybody, Jamie? Maybe you can't add, but I think I got it.
Oh, yeah, this came out of us walking all over Maple Corner and looking at, and paying attention over time So like where are people already parking? Where they're not able to get as far off the road as we'd like, and which of those areas could be potentially pushed back a little to give them a little more space and get them a little further out in the travel lane, just to ease that narrowing.
I would say that I've come home one evening and down the hill and made a right on Kent Hill Road and almost ran into the back of a car that was parked right there. It's dark. They're right in the middle of the road and missed them by that much. I mean,
Yeah.
so anything before Chris's driveway has got to be off the road there. 'Cause people take that corner, you know, and they don't expect someone to be there.
For sure.
That's been an issue. I know going up towards the community center on the left-hand side where you can park, that ditch certainly didn't help getting cars over to the right further. And that's a big safety issue. I'm just wondering if we can get some steel grading to put over the ditch that you could put a car on, but that would get you over further, but the water would still go through. I don't know.
So the way it was set up, which I never fully understood, but it's kind of the way it's always been, is you're not actually supposed to park on that side, the ditch side at all.
Oh,
You're supposed to park on the community center side.
Right.
oh,
Which never made as much sense to me because there's more driveways and less space. But
okay.
for whatever reason, that's sort of always been the Maple Corner parking etiquette is to be on the community center side.
On the south side. Okay. All right.
But I think that's a kind of a cool idea.
Um,
Sure, can I chime in?
yes.
So I met with Jamie on Thursday and walked around, and in my experience, parking is always challenging. Right, and it's a sign of success, so it's a good problem to have, but people are very funny about parking. If they can't see where they wanna be, they won't tend to park, you know, in a logical safe spot. They'll park on the edge of the road and take risks and taking that thing. But, so it makes sense to me what you're contemplating. The first three on that list make total sense and, you know, provide some additional spaces and hopefully improve the flow and, you know, help people be aware of the rules anyway. The idea of parking up the hill, starting up the hill on County Road, we talked about that and walked up, and I encourage people to go and look at what's going on there. There is a bank, of course. That's the beginning of the, you know, there's the bottom of the ridge, basically, that goes up to Robinson Hill. And, so there needs to be a ditch there. And I think the further down, the closer to the West County Road you are, the more space there is. And I think there is opportunity to widen that. And we'd have to figure out logistics, but you could, I'm pretty sure you get at least a couple cars completely off the roadway. I think as you move up, it narrows and then you can make it better, but then it's harder to get cars completely off the roadway, and that's a tricky thing for the town to blast that. That is my opinion. But, you know, on the other hand, anything we can do to help and make it safer is worth considering.
Yeah, I've got several thoughts, and I also had, Barbara McAndrews wasn't able to make it tonight. And she had some thoughts that I promised to represent too, which I kind of agree with. I think it's important to say that like the responsibility, I think, in the short term to try to keep people parking in a safe, you know, manner, that responsibility falls on the store during kind of what we can call like peak events. And then, you know, I think even within that, there are kind of two categories of events, and some of those you've got like the high draw events where you can almost tell that there's going to be a high demand for parking relative to who's playing at the Wham. Yeah, exactly. You know, and so like on those evenings, like what's going to be the plan for managing parking? Because people are gonna want to park wherever they can find a spot, and I get the sense that the, you know, the hosting capacity, exceeds the parking capacity relative to whether or not people are carpooling from other communities, right? So I almost wonder, if the community store can, continue to have more conversations with some of the adjoining property owners in that neck of the woods that may be able on a temporary basis be willing to open up like extra parking, that some kind, that could be sign, like there could be signage saying like, this is our bonus parking, you know, we already know that the community center parking lot gets used during those events, and then that exceeds, and then what's gonna be the bonus space, and is there a spot, and can the town participate in, you know, blessing a curb cut if it needs to be adjusted or modified or something like that, that could help facilitate, access to one of those areas on a temporary basis relative to events. But second to that, like, what's the plan to, before that, I guess, like, what's the plan to kind of govern that space, or that parking or parking behavior specifically around the store? I mean, you have the emergency vehicle passage through Maple Corner, that is obviously a consideration. You know, obviously, the communities, and citizens passage through that corridor, safely without a bunch of cars, you know, impeding or constricting, the traveled lane. And then you also have, I guess, like emergency vehicle access, like to the store itself, should it need to be, you know, access to the parking area. And some of those events, like, you can't even get around the rotary, or into the rotary. So it comes down to likely a staffing conversation and who's going to be the parking czar during events, as people are filing in and keep it. And is that something that the store is, or Whammy are willing to explore, to make sure that there's somebody dedicated to getting folks filed in there as reasonably as possible. And then, you know, the other kind of category I've noticed more recently is like people just being very liberal in their interpretation of what the edge of the parking is during like the lunch hour, or afternoon. This year seems to be different because there's an additional like one or two vehicles that are like parking out into the road on that southern edge of the lot, like, you know, in front of the knotweed, and then like, I give them credit for being parallel, but they just seem to, you know, keep adding people out, and
Yeah, that's what's going on.
and
Going on today at lunch, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
So in the medium term plans, is there a specific thought around like how to delineate between the parking area and then the end of the town right of way, or curbing of some sort? I know there's some curbing in there, it kind of gets buried now, like where the sign used to be for the gas pump, but was that part of the initial thought process or consideration?
We haven't really discussed that, but I could imagine. I think it's true that delineation between road and parking area gets blurred easily. And part of it is because where it goes into Kobe's driveway, like the culvert ends way back from the road. And so cars keep parking. It would be interesting to see where that curb material would go, but I think that's probably a good idea. And in terms of a parking attendant, you know, I think we certainly could, you know, hire somebody on whammy nights, but really it's as frequently an issue at lunch
Right.
at night, or a random, Saturday afternoon, there's an event at the community center. And so all of a sudden, there's 40 cars in Maple Corner for the community center.
Today, I mean, I was up there today, riding my bike around, as you can imagine, packed with
Yeah.
swimming.
Right,
And-
and half of them are at the store instead of the community center.
And the cars were out. I mean, this was the time we were there at 1 o'clock. I don't know where we're at right now, but yeah, they were already, it was like almost like a whammy night.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it Monday?
Right, and we had a conversation about, should we be strict about
Right.
customer parking only? Right, we could put up signs, we could enforce, we could make fake tickets to put on, right? But then that's just pushing those cars out to the sides of the roads,
Mhm.
right? They're still gonna park somewhere in Maple Corner if they're meeting people in Maple Corner. So I don't think pushing them out of our lot,
Yeah.
so it solves sort of part of our component of the issue, but it doesn't address the broader.
I mean, I think that like if that is something that the store is willing to entertain, just from the rationale of whose responsibility is what, I think that if the store is willing to kind of spend a little bit of goodwill equity in trying to push that volume out, that is then community usage that then I think starts to fall more squarely into the town's responsibility of like people who are at the swim area, or who may be like biking or walking the loop or mountain biking in that area. And I think those are activities that we probably would like to encourage, but we would give the town, if we could start to quantify what that overflow is, like during the day and the afternoons, maybe that's something that's quantified information that we can then start to hang our hat on for like exploring. Maybe we want to look at how we address the swimming area parking capacity, or again dovetail into a conversation with an adjoining property owner about like making some other communal parking available in Maple Corner that the town could contribute towards developing. I'm pretty squeamish, I think, about personally about trying to expand the parking along the right of way, like up or down the county road, just because of all of the like knock-on considerations that come with it, in addition to public safety. I mean, I think we have to do a little bit of homework on how people deal with that, like whether that's even like an acceptable use, like the town sanctioning, parking in the shoulder area of a road seems like a bit of a quagmire, but in those particular areas, we have like water infrastructure and drainage, and I think that that's a pretty creative idea with the grates, but I can see that being a perpetual maintenance issue, unless you're talking about having like something that could be easily cleaned out, a piece of infrastructure that could be easily cleaned out, like a few blocks or something like that, or that, extending the paving, which is gonna, get other hackles up, but,
Yeah, I guess for an outside little devil's advocate on, because we have talked about neighbors in yards and things like that, and that's come up, right? There's
Sure.
a lot of space here in Vermont, and then there's not.
yeah, of course.
With no parking.
With no parking, which is, it's kind of crazy, right? And people open up their land to parking for different, like a little business now.
Would it be possible for though,
Yeah.
employees to use that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little, like,
Right.
now the onus goes on to them, and parking, where there's parking, unfortunately, there's problems.
Mhm.
It's-
Always.
It's, yeah. And so we gotta that's why we wanted to put this forward, because until someone says, okay, I'm opening up my lot. And I'm gonna charge, cause everyone's got the app phone, everyone's got their mobile phone out. And we could easily figure out, come up here and.
Right, and we do have a couple of people we intend to talk to about that, but I will also say, 10, probably 10 or 12 years ago, I was part of a informal committee in Maple Corner that was trying to address the same problem, parking in Maple Corner. And we spent a year and a half and talked to probably 30 landowners within a mile of the store. To try, we wanted, ultimately we were talking about a park and ride was sort of the start of conversation, because at the time there was some state money for developing park and rides. And we struck out, we talked to every landowner that had a chunk of land that could be suitable for parking in the region, and I don't know that dynamic has changed. And sort of to your point, I think when I was thinking about this a lot lately, and every town in Vermont that has municipal parking at one time didn't have municipal parking.
Right,
And had this conversation. Right, like as downtowns grow and become more vibrant, it's a municipal infrastructure thing that has to be addressed at some point. And so I totally get that hesitation, and I share.
Sounds like you're trying to parlay this into an eminent domain. I am not prepared to have that.
Not at all. I just as I think about it, there must be other examples of towns who have been through this process in the last 5 years. Or, more recently, as opposed to an established downtown that might have some input, I don't know.
Jamie, have you thought about talking to neighbors just for employee parking? Because you'll have 4 or 5 employees there.
Yes.
And you could open some spots up that they could park somewhere else or stack their cars up really well somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a good
We
idea.
have been thinking.
That's a good idea right there. I hadn't heard it quite like that. That seems like a more reasonable approach to approaching private.
So the neighbors know who it is, and know they're gonna be there at a certain time, there's not a lot of hoopla going on.
Well, and I guess the other thing that I would add in there, is that, the permeable systems that, are now available for like light usage, light duty and even heavy duty, parking solutions, like concert areas that otherwise, want to maintain a grassy area, that can still absorb and transfer, like those have gotten, cheaper and better and easier to maintain. So, I think if the conversation continues with adjacent property owners, I think it's hard for folks to sometimes envision what some of these things are, and the more clear you can be about what the proposal is, I think it helps people wrap their heads around what the ask actually is. There are now, GeoGrid, systems that have gotten less expensive, and they come in a number of different flavors, that they can be reseeded and planted with all kinds of native grasses and that sort of thing. They can have underlying drainage and water storage, that minimizes impacts. So and they can be left to grow the way they need to grow until there's a vent, and then they can be mowed to accommodate parking. Anyway, a lot of concert venues are now using them, so that they can maintain permeable areas for parking, instead of covering everything with vast expanses of impermeable space. Anyway, so I think, thank you for the time and consideration, and willingness to address the issue. I wonder if it, makes sense. Is it fair to say that, that the store is committed to trying to manage parking in the short term to minimize traffic impacts? And then we'll be exploring signage, and would it be fair to have, put this as, something we can have an update on, maybe in the next, meeting? Just to see kind of
Couple meetings.
couple, yeah,
I'll be.
few meetings away, okay. So we'll try to do another month cycle, and then at the end of August, have a check-in and see how the rest of summer event scheduling and management goes, and have a conversation about what, more specifically, what signage you were thinking about having put in. Yeah.
Another idea, as far as the town potential that might be, probably maybe the LCT has some, resource or something about town municipal parking.
Examples of whatever.
Yeah, and also issues regarding right of way, parking on the right of way, what we need to think about, and address. And if the road crew has any thoughts about the drainage issues and potential solutions.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that specifically. We talked about the things that were on the proposal. They had a lot of questions about how would it be maintained, you know, specifically that stretch in county.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that being on the hill, or I think I would, if anybody looked at that, I think that they'd already kind of considered that the ditch on that west side of the road is already kind of inadequate. We're talking about going up at the paved section of
They're already, they're.
county, and then,
Yeah.
and
I
so,
didn't realize how close the bank is.
And-
It's right there.
and I have to assume that they're led pretty quickly, so like, I want to be realistic about how much,
There's-
you might be able to get a
There's not,
half car width.
there's space there, but there's not.
Yeah, that seems like, again, like, I think we're talking about more than 4 or 5 worth of vehicle issues here, gathering 5 here and moving 3 here. I don't know if that solves the problem all that much.
It helps.
Every thought helps.
Yes, Peter.
May I just ask a question? What is the capacity of the Maui Bar and the store? That's pretty flexible, especially in the store.
Yeah.
You can have 10 people coming through all at once and running there, but do you have an idea of the capacity of the Maui Bar? How many people? Is there a legal limit? I don't know.
Yeah, it's higher than would fit the legal limit.
Yeah.
I think it's higher than fit, you know, I think it's. I'd have to look, I'm not 100% sure.
How many seats are there in the bar?
5. And, you know, the interesting thing about the parking is it's not even always, there's not a direct correlation to how busy the store or bar is to how busy the lot is. Like,
It's a pretty wishy-washy question.
constantly, somebody will come in and say, oh, I almost didn't stop. There's 40 cars in the lot. There's only 10 people in here.
Yeah. I think the more of that we know, I don't know how you do it for a bit, but like.
It's a hard one, right, Jordan? You've got stuff going on at the community center, you got people still hanging out at the pool, especially this time you're at the pond. Then the stuff's coming in the land, it's
Yeah,
It's messy.
it is. But I think
it's working, but we're getting to the point where that's why we're having this conversation.
But as Kurt was saying, every increased spot
Yes.
helps,
Yes,
right? Like if we can add 6 spots to our lot,
it's a big deal.
that makes a big difference. And maybe if we, you know, maybe there's a world in which we get, whatever, 3 spots going up on the shoulder somewhere. every bit helps.
Well, again, thanks everyone for the time. I think this is a good conversation. It's a problem absolutely worth solving, and there are other parts of the community that, you know, will want to explore more things. So a lot of opportunity for education.
We're on it. We're starting to work on it more and more as the board, so.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
your
you.
time tonight.
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks to you.
Have a great rest of the summer.
I think it's impressive that you spend so much time on it.
What's that?
It's impressive that you're spending so much time. It's not an easy question, and it's, I mean, it's saying there's only one way to do it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peter, I appreciate the feedback. So the next item on the agenda is a check-in with the planning commission. And an update, which I imagine largely revolves around town plan status.
Luke, did you have some slides you wanted to share?
I just had one thing I'm gonna submit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Second. I think I'm logged, I think it accidentally logged me in with the Calais login, so I think I can just go ahead and post.
Oh, you're the other team cows. Okay, great.
What's that, Esther? So, and since this is the first update I'm giving to the select board, you guys feel free to, you know, let me know if the format works or if there's other things you want updates on, but about a month in on the planning commission, and just to kind of start off with personnel, we do have 2 open seats still. Talked to Carter about this last week. Still looking for 2 people. One person who potentially need a person to be a clerk at the end of the summer, but we didn't elect Vicky Arthur to be our clerk. And then 2 meetings ago, I would say best put it ambushed and elected the chair of the planning commission. So I dutifully accepted, but as these updates, you know, happen, I'll be coming to you guys to provide the updates and try to wrangle gaps as I learn how all this works. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for you know, putting me on the board. This is something that I'm really passionate about. So, I think the main question is, when is this thing gonna be done? And I think, you know, for me, I kind of think in Gantt charts, so I'm gonna share.
Could I stop you quick and ask one question? And this may just be something to ruminate and take back to the commission, but I think as much as we want to encourage, you know, broad and diverse representation on these committees, larger groups can sometimes stymie productivity, especially with really heavy, weighty items like this. And we're increasingly in a situation where we've got lots of vacant seats and limited people to volunteer their time to these very important things. And so I would put it back to the planning commission to maybe entertain the idea of either reducing the size of the planning commission, or if they think that if the group thinks that more participants and would be helpful, to give us some feedback as a select board on skill sets outstanding that would be nice to have, or perspectives that would be nice to have as far as, like, you know, knowledge gaps within the board.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly, I mean, with myself being the exception, the team we have is really prepared in terms of their backgrounds.
Yeah.
The sections that are open at the moment. I mean, I feel, you know, the fact that we've got Vicky, who's got all this experience with mapping, you know, creating maps, and Melanie, who's experienced with, you know, natural resources. I think, you know, our energy section, we're learning, so some more help with that. And then I feel like
Do we need two extra? Maybe, at least one extra, just because I feel like we're going to have some folks that are gonna, not be able to be relied on as heavily in the next like 6 months. So if we had one extra person, I'd feel a little bit better about having a backup for a clerk and things like that. But skills wise, I would say energy, and then depending on how we get through this energy section, grant writing. People who have had, any general experience with grant writing, I think would be another really great skill. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, let's see. What is it? 5, so there's 8 total seats, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the 5 we have, we could probably do it with 6. But yeah, anything under, I mean, in my opinion, even if 10 is still okay, but not being too unwieldy, but we'll see.
Yeah, I just want to put, I mean, we do prefer to have, odd numbers. So if we're going to consider, any kind of reduction in the size of a committee, we generally want to, make it, 9, 7, 5, et cetera, just for voting purposes.
Oh, right.
So, but, that's just kind of a caveat there, but not something that has to be decided today. Having some feedback on skills that are interested or needed, or perspectives that are needed is helpful, and we can try to include that in our calls for volunteers. So we'll do some more ruminating on that, and
Does the select board ultimately decide the size, or does the commission?
I mean, the select board ultimately just decides the size, but that's one of those things I can't envision a situation. Yeah, we deeply care on what's functional and reasonable, for the committee. So that would come from a lot of input and blessing from the committee as a whole, but certainly as the chair, on how to manage kind of that size. So, but in the short term, anything that we can do to be more specific in our calls for the types of folks that would be ideal candidates, and really help kind of round out the skill sets would be great. So we'll take grant writing always, and we'll try to include some energy as well. Yeah, thanks. All right. Sorry about that. Anyway.
No, that's totally fine. That's one of the things that I wasn't sure that was totally under our purview to change. So there's I've broken this up really into to 4 major initiatives that we're working towards. So the first is just the town plan revisions. Bill Sylvia, so we have 4 different sections. I know this is kind of hard to read, so I'll try to zoom in a little bit, but basically, right now, we have our natural resources and environment section. We have flood resilience, we have enhanced energy, which is the big myth, and we have resource equity, which are flood resilience and resource equity are coming out of CVRPC requests for us to include those. So there's some extra work that those are close to being done. Natural resources is also, and these are targets for us. We've never put together like a target date. We want to try to have these things done. So this is kind of, as much as I know, I'd like to have the group try to set a date so that we don't linger on these things for too long. And just try to keep ourselves accountable. I think what we want to do is have that enhanced energy done by October. And a lot of what we're doing right now is just, we've got so many different contacts at CVRPC that we're working with all at the same time. So it's coordinating with them and then also establishing bi-weekly or monthly check-ins with them instead of making it ad hoc, to make sure that like when we have those meetings, we have something for them to review. And I'll get into like our work with them in a second and then how that's shaping up. Like that's the town plan. So what we want to do is we want to get to October and be able to hand off the town plan to the select board to review. So I've got this time slotted in October. So that would leave, we give as much time as you guys need to review the town plan. And then we've got the public hearing and warning, which I believe is a 60-day warning period. And so we would leave time for public comment and then pursue at the very end, the regional plan, commission approval. So those are the two big ones for town plan.
Does it make sense to give us the ones that are gonna be done like in August? We review, rather than holding the deadline for it. They're not gonna change that.
They could be changed when they get folded back in.
Okay, then no.
So, but, I mean, there could, we absolutely could send you, the finished draft sections to get feedback sooner rather than later. It's just that some of the footnotes and things are gonna be completely off, but, you know, you guys are okay with the fact that some of the footnotes are gonna change when they get folded, when it gets folded into the major document. The content would likely, you know, we could finish those sections and send it over for review.
I think that's a good idea, Bill.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, give us more time.
okay, so then the timeline for
The only
that.
thing I would ask that if we are gonna do it that way, then any changes made after we've gotten this first draft need to be, you know, highlighted out so we know what's changed. Otherwise, we're doing the whole thing again.
Well, and I don't, and if there's a chance they're gonna change it, I'm not gonna send those sections to you guys, so that could just become endless. So,
Okay.
but I need to get through the resource equity portion, it's basically the entire town plan, looking at it from an equity perspective. So there's some work that needs to be done to just look at the entire town plan as it's been written, and then, I can send it.
I'm sorry, I'm stupid.
No, I mean, it's new to me, it's essentially, so CDRPC, asked that we include this, basically what it means is best to our knowledge, making sure that there's equitable access to natural resources throughout the town, so that there's no one area or group that has, more access to a natural resource than others. Things like, public spaces, anything that can be distributed in the natural environment, so I would be looking for things like, you know, is there equity in terms of where, differences in income reside in a town? And it's kind of a lens that I would look at throughout the entire plan versus just like.
Is there a state law requirement for this, or is this just something that came from the RPC?
I believe there is a statute, I have to go back and look for it, which one it is, but yeah, I believe there was a statute that we at least include, so we could at the very least just say a one-line statement that is basically like, you know, that the town recognizes that we will do our best to make resources equitable. I just didn't feel like that was enough to basically just put a disclaimer, throw that in there. So my goal was like, well, if I can look through the doc objectively and see, are there places where there could be differences in equity, would we update it? And, you know, would we do something a little different?
But we only have authority over town-owned resources, correct? I mean, you can't tell somebody that they have access to somebody else's land.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, right.
so it's only town-owned resources we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Good point, Bill. It's an interesting line of dialogue. It's a concept that's new to me. It's got words that frankly I find kind of annoying to continue to. It's really hard, but like I wondered, like for a couple of examples, like to the extent that the town plan is supposed to be an informative document, that guides the incremental decision making, you know, as the town makes decisions, you know, this land conservation is one. You know, we've seen a couple of conservation easements that the town has increasingly been requested to contribute taxpayer dollars to help kind of like seed it or help cover closing costs, et cetera, et cetera. And a couple of times we've discussed whether or not those easements have a certain right or protected right of public use or access that has historically been present with the private ownership of that land. And I wonder if codifying a prioritization of something like that when we are considering those uses of taxpayer dollars for conservation exercises, that then gives the town a little bit more leverage in saying like, this is in part how we're trying to manage equity to access to natural resources or conserved spaces, where we may not otherwise have a lot of leverage. Anyway, that's like some real spaghetti against the wall kind of spitballing, but anyway.
And this is more about, let me read it. So to equitably distribute environmental benefits and burdens described in 3 VSA chapter 72, or proposed goal, advance equity by prioritizing support for households and neighborhoods facing disproportionate climate risk, prioritize investments that protect essential housing, access routes, community services, high-risk locations. Objective 2, ensure preparedness, outreach, and emergency communication tools are accessible regardless of technology, language, or mobility limitations.
And you're reading from what?
I'm reading from a template that CBRPC gave us for our template for language.
And it sounds like it's focused on disaster response.
Equity distributed environmental benefits and burdens. And so there's that piece for equity in neighborhood spaces and proportionate. So it's complicated, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I would recommend not delaying the town plan with like super duper job.
Yeah. I'm sure. But I don't think at this stage, there's any like risk to taking longer just to take a look at the town plan. Under this guise, so understood, but this is something that CBRPC gave us, I guess, a month or two ago and asked us to.
Yeah, it seems a little late in the process, this is my fault.
Sorry.
And I don't see, I'm looking at the statute, I'm not seeing any mention of it, so it may very well be through the plan, but I don't wanna delay this plan any longer. I mean, our goal, I think, is to have a good town plan,
Yeah, our state. So the second or third section here is around traffic calming, which is something that Jared, when he passed the torch, had introduced me to some folks at CBRDC and V-Trans to continue work on the traffic calming study. So
it's on 14.
On 14, yep. So it's kind of stalled out in terms of being able to go party, but it's kind of stalled out in terms of the work that we're doing with V-Trans. We're kind of trying to escalate it and get some more conversations going and see what's preventing us from getting us going. I know there's a meeting that we're trying to set up right now with V-Trans. But one of the things that we brought up on the meeting this last week was to talk about, we'd like to draft another memo or letter that we can, in conjunction with the select board, send to either media, legislators, whoever, to talk about the seriousness of not performing a traffic calming study or doing something about the risk that we have on Route 14, especially
Yeah,
Last month, the deaths of the two kids on Route 14. Again, it's just I think a lot of people feel like it's just a matter of time until something happens, closer to the store.
well, right, and we keep hearing they're gonna do the study this year, next year, this summer. We just, they,
The last thing we heard from Ruben at RPC was it's on indefinite hold.
oh,
And that's the planning commission, to their credit, didn't like that response, so
right.
they
Is
want to
it,
try an alternative route.
so yeah, is it a funding issue or is there a problem?
It has to do with procedure, I think, and V-Trans approving materials or approving these demonstration studies.
And guidance changing from V-Trans, so, yeah, so we're working to get to the bottom of that. Yeah.
And the alternate, representative for the CBRPC, traffic
Oh, great.
transportation advisory committee, yeah. So many acronyms. Yeah, and there's a meeting, tomorrow night that I'll be, attending. So there's always a round table of topics. And Ruben is always a part of that. And so I'll bring it up, in that meeting and try to press for a little bit more definitive, aside from it's on, indefinite hold, like what's the source of that hold, from V-Trans is, but I'd be curious to see if it's funding for infrastructure projects that are being underfunded or underallocated at the, from the federal budget. I was just reading today that like the almost $0 have been allocated, from the federal government that have been budgeted for, but not actually authorized for distribution. And I wonder how much of that is a part of this as well. And are there other sources of funding, that could be, pursued, maybe, for something like this?
Yes, any help with that would be fantastic.
Okay.
We move that along, but we are gonna have a meeting hopefully set up with V-Trans soon for the next couple weeks too, so they'll just add fuel to that.
Okay.
I encourage you folks, if you haven't, given much thought when you drive to Danville, that was a hot button issue 25 years ago or so. They were going to first bypass the village, and the debate was whether they go north or south of the village, just like they planned for 22 Marshfield. There was, of course, pushback on that, and they said, okay, we're coming through, we're gonna widen through your green and everything else. And it was like a riot, and I don't even know who the governor was, the end of Dean, early Douglas, that V-Trans was told to hold their horses, engage with community, and there was federal monies at that time, and a federal program, I don't know the name of it, but it forced V-Trans, came screaming to the table, and of course, the outcome was what you see there now. V-Trans takes a lot of credit for that. They didn't go into it willingly, but they came out of it very happy with the result. And if you notice heading east, the highway actually is the same width, but the shoulders come in.
Yeah.
And curving of it, and it's that traffic calming, it's a visual.
Yeah.
And it fools you into thinking and lightening up on the gas pedal. And the paint. Yeah. So, I mean, these are the things they can do. I think one of the biggest struggles is that entry off of East Hill into the village. That's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes. And, I mean, I don't want to harass the neighbors, but, on a busy time of day, I'll go in by the store, you have a little more lead time. They come up over that hill, and they're not going 35, many of them are not. Barely, they did.
This is why we've been on the list for a while.
It would be great if it could be a route somewhere further south, but over the hill blasted through, so that would be a different entry where it's just not like.
Yeah, the same thought this morning. Yeah, that whole thing is is on CVRPC's radar from a couple of different angles, and we just had a few months ago a conversation about hazard identification and traffic areas that Ruben was in, and we were circling areas on the map, and all they're working with is crash data and ticket. I don't even think it was ticket data. I think it was literally just crash data, which isn't representative of how many close calls there are, right? And we, at that time, we were talking about signage, you know, some sort of flashers that are triggered by people pulling up to different areas and like all of these things that, you know, technology that exists, but, you know, require a more kind of comprehensive, infrastructure approach. And it does make me think about the, you know, Danville situation where it needs to be included in a big project so that you can kind of take care of all of those things as efficiently as possible. So I'll press Ruben a little bit harder on that tomorrow night from CVRPC.
Great.
And see if I can get more definitive information about timelines. I mean, the biggest concern I have at this point is like V-Trans seem to be doing a lot of preparatory work with like in putting in culverts and that sort of thing. And there was a plan to repave that got punted now twice, and it would be a shame to see quite literally, you know, V-Trans steamrolling through a resurfacing project that doesn't somehow incorporate some design features through that corridor. I know.
Last section is just as we finish the town plan, I think this is why the call for grants would be super helpful, just getting into, the town plan is gonna give us access to more grants. And I think moving into a phase where we're really looking at development and transportation grants after the town plan has been approved. And looking into options for, and I don't know what has already been done, so if this has already been done, then I'm gonna bring it up again. You can tell me to shut up, but consider, you know, what types of consultation are needed for village development. And I think that would be a great use of our time after the town plan is done, and we can look at actually bringing, you know, meaningful dollars into the town. That's basically the four areas that we're doing. We've got our milestones. Our milestones are set out. We've just got recurring meetings with CVRPC, and maybe there's some recurring meetings with V-Trans. I think that's it. Any other questions though in the group?
So initially there was a thought to sub out the refining process of the town plan, or hired out as I'm hearing that the committee's gonna take a stab at continuing to try to chip away at it internally, to bring it across the finish line at this point. And
Yeah, we've only got two options.
Yeah.
Either we hire a CVRPC or a refresh, and that's $15,000 to $20,000.
Yeah.
Or we do it ourselves, and it just doesn't have, with the amount of access that CVRPC is giving us at this stage for free, like, we just need to make the best use of every hour they give us.
Yeah.
And that'll get us over the line without having to pay for anything. So, I mean, I would absolutely recommend, if not this year, but maybe next, 2027 fall, considering going out for the municipal planning grants and trying to get money to have, and those grants are up to like 30 grand, and that would cover the entire town plan rewrite, all of the public commentary, getting, you know, it's basically soup to nuts, the entire town plan. If you get that grant, so I mean, I think that would be a great route to go, so that we don't take, you know, 3 years to, however long to finish.
Well, or when the plan deep, I mean, if you, is that 5 years? Isn't it 5 years?
8. But I think it's typical to do a mid-cycle
Like
refresh.
a refresh, yeah, and that's cheaper too, that's like 15, 20,000, but it's still quite a bit more than we have in our budget, so.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for the time and thanks for accepting the role of
Yeah.
chair and jumping headlong into having some structure and to the process and providing the update.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. Any other select board members have any other comments or questions at this time?
Did you have any questions for us, or?
No, I mean, you answered the questions. I've just been shooting over to Kari in the last couple of weeks. He's been answering reporting, so I think I'm good there. Oh, actually, no, I do have one last question. If we write the letter about the traffic calming, can we, maybe this is something you guys can either talk about at some point later or now, but would you guys be willing, to sign on to say that it's been sent by the Calais Select Board? I mean, I'm not expecting anything crazy.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I can't speak for anyone, but like, I don't see why we wouldn't want to do something like that.
Okay.
For sure. And given the recent fatalities, I mean, within the context of, we've spent a lot of time talking about traffic calming and speed limits and enforcement, and we've increasingly increased our budget for enforcement. And maybe we've made a dent, but like, we're always going to have an enforcement issue and be limited by our budget. And so this is a perfect example of a corridor that is in desperate need of design work to fundamentally change people's driving behavior, as opposed to relying so heavily on just purely enforcing a speed limit in a corridor and stretching all the resources involved in trying to take that approach. So I wonder if in that letter we lean on that particular rationale.
It's the most dangerous spot in town, I would say, and it's not within our purview.
Right.
We need help.
We need help.
We need help. From the state.
From the state. Well, thanks again, Luke. Appreciate the time. The next item up is the NEKCV use of right of way application, which is a topic that we're revisiting. David had come in a month ago-ish, I believe, to kind of give a preliminary overview of this permit, which was a permit that was accepted, but work hadn't been performed and now is in need of being renewed, and good opportunity just to make sure that nothing has, circumstances haven't changed, considerations haven't changed, and to certainly educate the existing select board members on what the needs are, the rationale, et cetera, since we'll be considering putting our signature on it.
So we've got Jeff Whitchurch from NEKCV here tonight to answer any questions. And the way I framed it with Jeff was that we would take this opportunity to surface questions, concerns, have some discussion, and then ask you to consider the application in 2 weeks. So since it's a little more extensive than the average application.
Right,
In fact, and Jeff added an additional site from the application that was approved in 2022.
correct. Thank you for getting us on the agenda for tonight. Really appreciate that. In addition to what you said, that we're revisiting one of these sites, these others weren't actually part of that original. It was really that Valentine Road that I think was on the original. So some of these are ones that hadn't been previously approved. The Valentine Road one had been previously approved, and I think that is very similar, if not identical, to the original. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or go through each of the sites. I don't know how you want to proceed with that. At some point, though, I would like to address that in the time that that we've talked last, there have been two slight modifications in the Apple Hill Road and the Bliss Pond Road projects that I'd like to propose and figure out how best to incorporate those into this existing project.
So I think before we get into like any specific questions about the segments that are proposed, I could be so bold as to characterize the group's kind of 30,000 foot concerns are that this seems like a lot of work and a lot of infrastructure to bury under the roads, and I would certainly like to better understand what the rationale is behind, you know, why bury in these places versus using existing poles if there are existing poles. Like what's the
Yeah, so oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean, I'll just continue to ramble on like that if you don't cut me off. So best to just dive in with.
So the answer is in all of these locations, I believe there are not existing poles. Installation of poles is a lot more expensive than going underground. Requires more yearly or biannually, every 5 year, 10 year, whatever maintenance. And frankly, a lot of people don't like to see that outside of their houses. So it hides the infrastructure, cheaper to install, cheaper to maintain. And there's no existing poles in these locations. They're usually extensions off of existing poles. I think we'll see in all of these that they're either connecting where two poles have ended on either ends of lines, or just continuing as a longer run off of an existing end pole.
Can I ask about that? Because I had a chance to look at this more closely. Jeff, the Jack Hill installation, it looks to me like there are poles along Jack Hill Road.
Can you?
Jack Hill is part of the Moscow Woods.
Okay, part of the Moscow Woods. So that's okay.
Moscow Woods has poles, they're just phone poles, but there are poles there.
I think those poles are not there anymore, actually.
No, they are. I mowed around them.
Really?
I don't think they go all the way through there.
They're not all the way through. They do not, but they go up and they go up ledge.
So that's interesting. So that's let's see, one GP4. Just 1 second here.
But it's just phone. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the poles that are shown on that map, those actually do exist. Are you looking at the map or?
Yeah.
Okay. So do the poles go from, that south side of Moscow Woods Road, where it says, P04436? Those poles exist from that south end of the red line on Moscow Woods Road, up 5 poles.
I think that needs to be confirmed, but that's a question for this application.
Yeah, and I actually, from our end, I have it marked as we did confirm that. So it's, but I'm not saying you're wrong at all. It could have been oversight, but we can verify that. And if those are poles that are usable poles, we can definitely go off of that last one, because we will use existing poles if they are there.
So back to my question about Jack Hill Road.
Yes.
That's the other road on.
Right, that's the one just west of Moscow Woods.
Yeah.
What was your question about that again? Sorry.
Oh, there appear to be a lot of poles there.
Yes, and in our field notes, we have that those poles don't actually exist there. And to your point that you mow around them, I'm not going to argue with you on that. We would have to go back and verify our own records then. our field crew may have miscommunicated to our design team on what was actually existing out there.
I don't remember Jack Hill so much as I remember Moscow Woods, so I could be in there. But there's a bunch of pole markings on there.
Yes, there are, and those are all shown as moved. So we have our records indicate that those used to be there and they're no longer there.
There's a history of poles being left up, they're not supposed to be left up, they're not being used. I don't know how that applies to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, my lay understanding of that is basically that the power utility generally owns the pole, and then they're leased to the communications companies, and then if the power company is going to install new poles, they cut the tops off of them, and after they've hitched their lines to the new pole, or cut the tops off of them so that they're shorter, and now they're
Only
in
communication poles at that point, right?
like orphaned poles. I've had the experience of having to deal with one like that, and nobody wants to take responsibility for it because the power company says, well, it's not ours, we're just waiting for the communications company to take their lines off of it, and then we'll remove it, but it's all our map, and they start to exist. Anyway, I wonder if, like, for the purpose of clarity, it is a little confusing because there's only one key on here for an icon for a pole, so it's unclear which ones have been verified as
You're exactly right. And so just talking it through, the last pole on Moscow Woods Road is that P04436, that most southerly one that we say in the project description that will go underground from that going north along Moscow Woods Road.
I just gonna comment, that Moscow Woods Road severely flooded out in storm 3 years ago. And considerable effort was made to harden the ditches and do work to make sure it doesn't happen again. And how is that all gonna be dug up and put back the way we had it so it was hardened?
So is
all the hardening comes out of it.
Is there riprap in your ditches
Yes.
through there? Does your right of way extend beyond the riprap?
Yes, but there's a steep bank just beyond the road.
Okay.
And beyond that, while we've made best plans to harden that infrastructure, I mean, I think it would be hard to say that it's impossible that segment of road or some of those segments of that road wouldn't be susceptible to future washout, even
Absolutely.
and so I think that there's, a fairly notable risk of there being utility infrastructure buried in a road where even after it's been hardened and replaced, we will have utility infrastructure in there.
Completely understood. And we ran into that in Charleston actually last week, and we did, that's great to hear that history of that area, what its flooding history is. And so in this one spot in Charleston, we decided to go aerial, and we can install poles through there if we need to. So this, if everybody's amenable to it, and this turns into something that would be a much better idea to install poles, we can go aerial through there. And from what you're saying right now, it sounds like that might be the case.
All right, is the road crew looked at any of this yet?
Yeah, they've seen it.
Okay.
I mean, to be blunt, they were a little taken aback by how much. And it's also in the context of I think it's getting more increasingly challenging to identify where there are buried lines. Part of that is DigSafe, and the service that DigSafe provides is, I think, less reliable. That's my understanding. You're supposed to give them at least 3 days, but sometimes that's not long enough, and the quality of the work that we've gotten has not always been the best. So I think that's sort of coloring their view.
Well, and my understanding with DigSafe, for the most part, they're using like more powerful metal detectors to detect where these things are. And you've got fiber that is not generally, cased in metal, or is the design of these buried lines, or I guess the material that's being used, are they somehow
We put a
detectable?
tracer wire through them.
Good. Um,
So I think it would definitely be a good idea for us to go out there with your road foreman or whoever you suggest to go out there and take a look at this and come up with a real world solution to getting fiber through there if that's what's wanted.
I think that's a good idea.
I think what would be helpful, since I think the accuracy of the kind of Google Earth maps is pretty good working document, but generally better than what we get when we're, what this doesn't include is like the, position of any culverts within any of these segments. So I wonder if it would be reasonable to ask the road crew to take these maps and spend some time looking at these, noting on these maps where there are culverts that cross the road, and then also, find a way to kind of reasonably note where we've had a history of washout or recent like ditch reconstruction, et cetera, so that we can kind of provide that, be a little more proactive in providing that feedback to CV Fiber.
Exactly, that historic knowledge of the washouts and what was there and what is there now and what problems that's remediating are valuable. And I think it might be really helpful if one of our installers or our field crew come out there maybe with your road foreman and look at it together. That's often what we do. We do ride outs and we go out there with the road foreman and talk about individual pinch points, solutions, whatever, how deep we want to go under the roads. Each town has their own, history of working with the telecommunications or their own history of, what they know about the area. And they've come back with, we've latched onto the fiber cable that was buried only a foot below the surface. And so, our goal is to figure out what that sweet spot is for the towns and make sure that we're getting low enough that excavators aren't going to latch onto anything during regular road maintenance, during flooding rehab, during snow removal, any of that. And I have heard horror stories about other utilities in the past saying they're going, 3 feet deep, and it heaves up on the surface the next.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who has dug in Calais is pretty acutely aware of, the ledge not being all that deep, underneath, any of the surfaces. And what's the contingency plan for running into any of those, segments?
And there's a couple of contingencies for that. One of them is if we can't get to the desired depth, we'll encase it in concrete. So the excavators will hit that concrete before they'll dig up the wire. Another is, going deeper or.
And I assume the preference is to be within the right of way, but off of the traveled surface, right?
Not necessarily. In Peacham, they actually want us to excavate the road, and we return it. We put it down the right traveling lane of the road, and already excavated material, disturbed material, which makes it easier for install.
Rather see that too.
That's where they wanted it.
Especially in the segment of Jack Hill where you're running parallel to what is a built-up roadbed, but is immediately adjacent to a wetland area, and also has maybe a box culvert, but if not, a pretty substantial bridge or I can't remember what that is. It's right on Jack Hill there, but what's the plan for getting through that piece of infrastructure?
Through a wetland or through, I mean, we can bore instead of straight excavate. Also, with boring machines that can punch through instead of fully excavating.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much of an issue there because the roadbed is so high that if you were planning on going within the roadbed, I think you'd be fine until you get to that culvert or box culvert or bridge. I don't
Right, and
know
we can still
exactly.
bore underneath that in the road. We just would have to
Mhm.
stop trenching and move to boring,
Mhm.
which would also preserve that wetland area, staying in the disturbed right of way in the road prism.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of, I'm hearing kind of the next step is to kind of do some field work with the road crew and coordinate that, with somebody from, NEK Fiber.
Yeah, so Jeff, I'll be in touch tomorrow. I had one specific question for the select board about this. I'm assuming that a new application will be submitted. And in 2022, the fee was waived. Would you like the fee to be waived again? Or fees or,
Are you asking me if we want the fees to be waived?
asking the select board.
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
Fees waived because it's a utility type project?
Well, we're very supportive of the
We
CD
want,
fiber.
we want the fiber.
Yeah, I assume that was part of it. We had two former select board members here.
Yeah,
We're not that concerned with the permitting application fee.
it seems like that's a fairly nominal amount and.
What is it? I don't even know what it is. I haven't seen what it is.
It's $100,000.
Per.
We just revisited it last week, unfortunately, timing. So,
It's very timely of you.
$50.
yeah, it's $50. I mean, I think, it's more of a symbolic gesture and I see why we wouldn't do that. I mean, I do have concerns about how much this costs and how much it could, impact rates, for ratepayers and that sort of thing, but that's out of our purview, so. Anything we can do to minimize the cost, I think are worth considering. And so thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the time. And thanks everyone for the question.
So
Well,
can I just summarize to make sure that I understand where we're going to go next? I will get in touch, or will someone get in touch with me? Or
Yeah, I'll reach out tomorrow, Jeff.
okay, great. That sounds perfect.
thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So sorry for members of the public as we're moving a little slowly through some kind of heady conversations this week. But next up on the agenda is roadside mowing and seeing the members of the public present. I'm assuming everyone's planning on contributing feedback into that subject matter. Is that right? No.
And when you cover, I have no.
Agenda. It is on the agenda. So for kind of background and context, we have gone through a period of considering and largely accepting private maintenance agreements. And as a result of kind of how some of those conversations have unfolded, and some continuing feedback that we've had relative to how late the road crew has gotten to mowing this year, and how that directly relates to the management and best practices with invasive species. Like these are kind of a Venn diagram of related issues that we thought warranted some time to discuss and how we'd like to move forward with providing feedback to the road crew. I'll say that, like, personally, from my perspective, I think we at a minimum have a gap in expectations around how it's managed when how it's being prioritized relative to the other seasonal work that needs to be performed. And I think that there's a need for some two-way dialogue to be had around both providing the select board, a little bit more quantitative information around how long it takes to actually perform the roadside mowing and, townwide and we also need to establish, what the expectations are for, or when it's being done and what segments, if we need to, look at the seasonality or the frequency, of that. And yeah, that's where this is coming from. So Ari, have you had conversations with some feedback? I was expecting a little bit of feedback at this point from the road crew on some of that initial quantitative information and how they're feeling the roadside mowing is going this year.
Yeah, I think there's acknowledgement that it's been a harder, more challenging year, between the late start and then not having, as much time to devote to it. And now it's sort of pivoted towards the grant projects. So the roadside mowing is not being addressed at this time, but I get back to it. And then some of the criticism that's been very difficult to agree. I think all that together is, it's a more challenging year for sure. But we did have a good discussion last week about, this year and other years, program in general. And I think the first thing to start with is, how we think about the purpose of the program. Why are we spending this time? And, I think the top two priorities, from the crew's perspective are safety and maintaining clear lines of sight around town. And then, just managing the vegetation so it doesn't become forest, with time. And that's just an ongoing challenge. I think we can talk about the invasive species and, that's an element of it, but I don't sense that that's the priority for the program. But still an important aspect of it. So anyway, this year and last year, Ogden Hersey's been the main driver. There have been other people driving. Ogden estimated it's roughly around 300 hours to do the first pass, and that would be two swaths of, on each side of the road. So it's a 4-foot mower, head, and so you're getting somewhere around 7-8 feet in, if you can get that. And so 300 hours, there is quite a bit of variation depending on how much woody vegetation they're dealing with. And, they pointed to the fact that the year Bill did it in 24, there was a lot, right? You probably spent more than 300 hours, I'm guessing, on that.
Sometimes 6 passes on one side of the road.
Yeah, and very detailed work, in certain places. But there was acknowledgement that the work that Bill did that year and what Ogden did last year, that it has improved somewhat. So maybe getting a little easier to do that first pass. And then the second pass, the subsequent pass, where that's done doesn't take as long and doesn't necessarily have to be every road we have either. They're prioritizing, especially that safety piece. I mentioned they did get a late start, due to the weather. I think we would like to be starting in early May, which is not always possible. And then, we can get that first pass done, that 300 hours in prior to focusing on the larger projects for the summer. That would be a good order of events and return, after the projects are done.
So that earlier also works better from the invasive
Right.
side, right?
Yeah, although I did get a sneak peek of the Conservation Commission's document that they drafted, and we're gonna discuss tomorrow night, but they're actually recommending June as the time to mow. I think we just logistically, we have to start earlier than that to address all the roads before Cherville goes to seed. But they're saying June is sort of ideal for them.
It might be, we certainly could, target those roads that have a travel issue and get those earlier.
Right, yeah, so I guess a little more information on why that is. I mean, I think that there's like this balancing act of, certain vegetation that the community would like to see, undisturbed through the early spring season, that are, native species and beneficial to have around. I'm thinking about like the orchids and that sort of thing that, are largely in wooded areas, and could probably stand to see go later, ferns, et cetera. But that seems pretty late for the, chervil and it would be helpful, I think, I would hope that like the Conservation Commission, my understanding is that they've spent some time trying to identify where some of these locations are that have
I've seen
acute invasives.
I've seen some species mapped. I don't know that it's all. The other one in that document that they prioritized was wild parsnip. I don't know much about. But certainly they've mapped some of the invasive conservations. And I think that would be a rational approach. I think part of the thinking with Chervil, maybe we're getting ahead, but is that it keeps going, right? It will continue to grow even after being knocked back. So maybe they're thinking that don't start too early because you're just gonna have to return to it.
But the way to get rid of it is just to keep mowing. I mean, some people take it out of it. If you mow your field a lot, it will come out.
Well,
You know?
I've spent enough time with Peter Harvey to get a different perspective.
Yeah,
Bill, that's not true.
yeah, I've seen it done. I've seen it done.
I didn't hay this year, but.
If you mow a hayfield like a lawn, you mow it out often enough, it will take the travel out of it.
But hay fields, you don't mow.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, but if you really mow it a lot, it will come out.
I've been mowing it my lawn every 4 days for the last 10 years, and it's still there.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures of it, because I'm letting it grow for last month.
Hmm.
And it's this side, it's, from this side.
Hmm.
And, so, no, it's.
Maybe I don't see it because it's just green, but it's not flowering, so.
Well,
But I think the Conservation Commission is, I'll work on them more.
I think something that's important, an important point for me is that I think that this is one of the fundamental responsibilities of the road crew and the highway department, is to be performing this work to a particular expectation. And so to the extent that, they're working the best they can to balance, performing this work relative to the other works that need to be done. I think that from my perspective, there's room to have a conversation about saying like, this is a core responsibility of the road crew and set the expectations around how and when, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And if that means that certain grant projects need to be managed in a different capacity, or with a different strategy, then that's a conversation that I think that we at least need to be able to entertain and have. We committed to the acquisition of a pretty expensive lawnmower so that we could self-perform when we wanted to perform the work. And aside from just the maximizing the value and usage of that to perform the work, it's also an investment that we need to protect, and waiting until too late in the season when overgrowth is significant and using it for in ways that it's not supposed to be used, like for managing woody growth and sapling and stuff like that, like well documented in the state and our own policies that is not the best practice to use them like that. It's usage of that equipment that is, that's hard on the equipment and prone to, uh, uh, public safety risks and damage to the equipment. But you know, if you have long grass, you can't see pieces of ledge, you can't see things in the ditch. There's also lots of dead wood that accumulates through the winter time that gets pushed out of the way, that's still in the right of way, that gets hidden. I mean, doing the work infrequently is just opening up a can of worms to maintenance risks and damage to the equipment. So I think the reasons for having a priority around doing the work regularly and making sure that the select board and the community know how much of that work there is to do and what it costs to do it, while meeting everyone's expectations, is kind of where this conversation needs to go, from my perspective. I don't know if any other select board members have any other commentary on that, but. Hold on, I'm letting them ruminate on everything that I just threw at them.
It seems like most of the negative feedback received is around invasives. Most of the feedback I receive is about invasives and the spread of invasives, so I agree, and I think there's room for more partnership and really bringing in conservation. You know, it sounds like they have some mapped out where invasives are, but I wonder if there's room for, you know, whether it's training of road crew members who mow in identifying these plants, or, you know, some further mapping by the Conservation Commission, or even marking. You know, the one I saw a couple weeks ago was the Japanese knotweed in Maple Corner. And I had a couple people stop me like, oh, they mow it. And then it's like spreads particles all the way up the side of the road. So I wonder if there's room for a partnership there to still get the mowing and achieve the goal of sightlines and safety and limiting bigger growth without further spreading.
I think it's a fair question, but I think that there's also going to be a kind of a nexus of expense. You know, I am hearing the need for prioritization and identifying the wheres. But I also think that there needs to be a balanced kind of expectation around what is a reasonable amount of time for the road crew to be taking preventative measures and, you know, washing off the machines, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think this is going to have to involve kind of a collaboration between property owners and the road crew, to try to meet as close as we can. You know, the invasive battle is literally perennial, and it is a hard war to win. And so I think if we focus most on how we remove or mitigate invasives within the right of way area, that will have a higher likelihood of being mowed, like with the knotweed. Like, we need to remove it from that area every 3 years to minimize its likelihood of being mowed. It's certainly not going to provide the town the ability to go onto a private property and continue to remove knotweed, and it is going to come back. But, you know, maybe we need to be looking at multi-year frequencies for things like that reduce the likelihood of spreading during the mowing process. Anyway, lots of ideas, but
Yeah, I just want to point out that, when you start first week of May and that 300 hours is accurate, there's only one mower. That's full-time hours, May and June. To get people.
8 weeks full time.
right, so there's gonna have to be a prioritization of which areas to hit first and a consideration of driving the machine around, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll work nights.
Sorry?
I'll work nights.
Go 24 hours a day.
Second shift.
Yeah, really, make people happy.
You know, I brought this up the last meeting, I'm kind of unbelievable, but it's 300 hours, that's 8 weeks. Like one position, I don't think that's reasonable to ask of a road crew, because this is their, like the construction season, this is their season. Get stuff done, and like, to give up on grant monies to mow the grass, it doesn't seem prudent to me. But to create a line item in your budget next year for dedicated position, if only to cut the 300 hours into 150 hours. And that would be like, at $20 an hour, would be like $3,300 or something.
Yeah.
And you're not, as a part-time person, you already do it with Ed Rowell, so you have precedent. You're not paying for health insurance and retirement, vacation and all that jazz. And so it's a real good use of taxpayer dollars, as opposed to having a, $35 plus overtime an hour employee plus pennies running a lawnmower. And like I said, there are young men and women who would love to do that, put the radio on, sit in the air conditioner, mow the lawn.
Well, I think that that's an oversimplification of the job, but I do hear the point, and I don't think, I wouldn't say that if that was the idea that you thought went over with a balloon, then I must have been absent that day, because like, I do think that fundamentally it does come down to that. I think it comes down to, we need to quantify what it is, we need to say that it's a priority. And then we need to have a conversation with the road crew about like how we're going to perform the work relative to the rest of the work that they're doing. And if that means, hiring, a seasonal, person, but there again, like, I think we're in a situation now where we have a relatively new full-time member of the crew who's been, largely tasked with doing this. And there's a need for training around both, expectations and just, the operation of the machine, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think it is worth having a conversation around, what are the hours, how accurate are those hours, and what's the most cost-effective way for doing that. I mean, I think that there's also a number of other things that are pet peeves of mine that if we're having that same conversation, there's a body of work that is still getting undone every year. That would maybe warrant a full-time position, but it's somebody who's not getting pulled into the grant projects, et cetera, et cetera. They're performing roadside work, related to, vegetation work, or ditch cleaning out, or et cetera, et cetera.
Dangerous trees, I see them all.
Down trees, frankly, I mean, I haven't run this by our the Conservation Commission or the tree warden, but it is clearly stated in a number of different areas at the state level, at the municipality level, that it is not advised and strongly discouraged to use flail mowers for maintaining woody plants. And I personally hate looking at it. And does that mean paying a premium for said younger individual to be out tasked with roadside mowing and also on a 2 to 3 year cycle for certain roads, going out with a pole saw and using the chipper that we have and taking care of these dead limbs and other limbs that are encroaching on the right of way? maybe that makes the roadside mowing more efficient. So you're planning for a scope of work that needs to be done every 3 years. Maybe it only needs to be done every 5 years if you're doing it with enough regularity to minimize that kind of thing. So there's I think a lot of room for dialogue around, how we'd like to see the time of the road crew. Prioritizing the first thing is quantifying how long this takes and why and when it needs to be done. And the feedback on the when is going to have to come from people with experience and knowledge of the invasives and the Conservation Commission from my perspective. So, what makes sense as far as next steps? Janice, I see your hand. I just wanted, before go ahead. I'm sorry.
Two things. One is there is precedent for a specific budget item just for mowing with a part-time person. I think 22, 23, those years, you'll find that there was a line item for that just to create so that there wasn't a distraction from other projects. The other thing you were started heading to is that I just want to amplify that this board has an opportunity to bring the Conservation Commission into the road crew and because part of what has to happen is there has to be buy-in from the road crew.
For sure.
And I think that you have that in ways that may not have always been present. And I talked to other both and I was happy that he's not questioning the worth of it and he's all in. So I'm glad to hear you talk about bringing the Conservation Commission in and creating that synergy between those two teams, because it really is ridiculous to have the idea that they're going to work in a vacuum. And I know you know that, so I just really, really appreciate that you're seeing it that way. And I just think you have an opportunity that may not have always been there to bring those together. So thank you.
Well, thanks for that feedback. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, all right, next steps for.
In terms of next steps, so the Conservation Commission is meeting tomorrow. I'm gonna attend. They're gonna speak specifically about roadside mowing and invasives. And we wanted to continue this conversation. This frame was more around the roadside mowing part, but it moves into invasives quickly, and we can take that up even more directly next time with their recommendations, if they're ready to finalize their recommendations. But I do think we could at least start this year's budgeting process by contemplating an item for mowing. It occurs to me that when Bill mowed, we had 5 full-time equivalents. So it was 4 full-timers and 2 half-timers is how we paid for Bill to mow. And then I think that went away. I think we got lulled into thinking we could perform it without those extra hours, and maybe that was wrong-headed. I'm not sure. But
I don't necessarily think it was wrong-headed. I mean, a few things have kind of evolved. We've got a collective bargaining agreement that kind of governs who's responsible for what, and so none of this can be kind of no decision around this can be made without having a conversation with the road crew about what they feel is their responsibility to perform under their job description, and then what the expectations are of the town to have certain work performed. And we have certainly had really good dialogue around that, and when we've seen and needed to hire externally or on a part-time basis, we've had that opportunity and collaboration of the road crew members to work through that. So I'm feeling optimistic about it, but that is a nuance that shouldn't be ignored and all of that. Anyway, any effort to continue, I think, to refine that 300 hours relative to road segments and the types of mowing activities. I almost kind of want to morph this into a roadside vegetation conversation, because that's invasives, that's the mowing, that's the No, that's the woody stuff, that's the, you know, dead limbs and those things that exist, after winter, and what do we do with those things? I mean, they impact grading just as much as they impact, the mowing practices as well.
Yeah. I will say this last few weeks has been, a heavy dose of, down trees and limbs.
Yeah.
To the wind, yeah.
Right, and I mean, I drive past it all the time, in a different municipality, but on a road that we share, but there's like a limb that is like
Yeah.
just trimmed to the edge of the traveled way, and like,
There
to
might be a
me,
white line there too, I think.
that's not acceptable, that's just as dangerous as having something that's going across the road. Maybe even more so, because people just drive by it, not thinking that's gonna be annoying, so it goes through a window. Anyway, has Ogden, had any formal training, like state, I know the state contractors who perform, or contracted to perform roadside mowing have mandatory training that they go through with the state. I wonder if that's a training that's available
We
to.
got billed to a dedicated training for mowing 2 years ago, but I don't think Ogden's done it yet. So,
Yeah,
It'd be good to
It
look
was
at
actually-
the, like what the timing of the
it was
next
worth
one
it.
is. Yeah.
It was worth it.
And get Ogden signed up for that. Maybe any other, members who would be interested in being involved. All right. Boy, I don't know where we're gonna be back on track scheduling wise, but I'm gonna table that conversation and topic for now and move on to the next one, and thank everyone for participation in the conversation. Next, segment is public comment, but I'm again not seeing any, other members of the community. Are there any community members that want to use that period for raising any other issue that, is not on the agenda? Okay, great, so I'm gonna move on. All right, I'd like to move on to the 2026 property tax rate. All right.
Sure.
No,
So
great.
same process as always. We take the town budget, we have the state education rates, that were published July 1st, and a summary of the grand list, which, was finalized last Thursday. And, put together through the spreadsheet and calculations that you've seen before. I did have Marguerite Ladd, who's the financial specialist at the LCT, review these numbers, so, you know, after quadruple checking myself, she verified. So I'm feeling pretty good about the numbers. The one pause I have is, wasn't able to provide the normal comparisons to prior years because of the reappraisal and the fact that property values changed,
Right.
and they changed uniquely for every property. So, I did spot check a few to make sure it made some sense, and I will do that when I actually, get ready to print these bills, but, for now, I'm just working from the calculations without those good comparisons.
So when you spot check, they were sort of comparable year to year.
Yeah, they're in the area of 3-4%. The problem is, if someone gets a property tax credit or current use, that changes each year, so, yeah, it's in the range of 3-4%, which is what I expected. The town rate was 4.8, the statewide education was, I think they came out at 3, something like that was what was published, so somewhere between those two.
So you're not gonna do a real, like a final number tonight, right?
I do have a final number, so the select board's been able to see it, I can put it up on the screen if you'd like me to walk you through it. How would you like to proceed?
Great mystery.
Just to respond to that question, the recommendation for the town rate is 0.5130.
So that's it.
And then in combination with the state education tax rate for homesteads, it would be 1.7378.
That's the total number.
That's the total tax rate.
1.78.
1.7378. And then non-homestead, 1.6685. Now, these are much lower than last year's rates, but everybody's values went up.
Right.
The grand list changed 86% on average, so.
And I mean, I looked at the calculations and it's not like a discretionary thing here, right?
No, there's no play. Yeah.
And the ed rate is right now just an advisory,
The ed rates are set by the state
right?
per town. And there's
We have, our CLA is perfect.
our CLA is 100%. So, yeah, we have no discussion on the education rates, those are provided to us.
Well, I appreciate all the work we did. I think we should improve it.
Are there any other questions about the rates from other select board members? I might have a lot of questions, but I don't think that there are reasonable answers to them.
You're like,
I mean,
big finance education district.
No.
Discuss.
Yes, but no.
You're also.
Starting at 8:07 p.m.
No, I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that, 2025, that rate is going from 0.8985 down to 5130. But there's no way to really kind of compare the performance of that relative to the budget, just because there are so many variables relative to how the tax or how the appraisal rates.
Like I say, when I get ready, and I like to print the bills tomorrow, when I get ready to do that, I will definitely spot check and find more examples of people that, well, I'll be able to see at that point property tax credits and current use values as well, and I can look at bills between the 2 years just to make sure we're reasonable. But I'm confident about these numbers. I couldn't review them anymore.
Yeah.
It wouldn't do any good.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate the organization with which you've approached this. And we do have a possible action for approving the 2026 property tax rate as proposed. Is there any other discussion about that? Questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommended rate.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You all right? And the next item is the approval of de minimis property tax and or the abatement of de minimis.
Right. So you did this once before, back in maybe December after the major tax collection effort. These last two, which are also below $5, that was what you approved last time, are the result of the delinquent tax collection effort, and for whatever reason, they didn't pay the full amount, but they're such a small amount that proposing just clearing them off the books.
24 cents and $3.34.
Yes.
Does the tax collector take a look at this every year and see if somebody's doing this just to be trouble?
Just to save a few bucks.
Well, just to.
That's always my question.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Sandra's practice. I've certainly done that. It's very random.
Okay, as long as it's random, that's.
It mostly has to do with errors that people make in writing checks. The more people on direct debit, the better, because those errors go away. You'd be surprised at how many people write a different number in numerals than they spell out.
Mhm.
And then it's things like that, or they misread the bill,
Mhm.
or they just transpose numbers. Yeah, it's a
So
lot of little things like that,
what are your recommendations?
that we abate those two small amounts. The 24 cents and the $3.34. So it's none and the music school.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm comfortable entertaining a joint motion to abate, the de minimis amount associated with none, for, I'm not seeing, for 24 cents and, abating, the piano association, $3.34.
So moved.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thanks, Carl.
And we do budget a small amount each year just for these.
For these, yeah.
It's a better use of our time.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And,
Efficiency.
and the tax collector's tenant. Very good. Moving on to administrative and action items. First item up is an acceptance of the resignation of Marge Sweeney and Jen Olson from the Ordinance Advisory Committee. So I guess some background on this is we had been as an Ordinance Advisory Committee kind of putting off the acceptance of these resignations. They've agreed to continue to serve on past their term as we've tried to wrap up considerations around the curb cut ordinance and use of the town right of way ordinance, and then a joint policy for managing the two of them. They're documents that are continuing to be refined, but we also added Ann Winchester onto the committee, who has demonstrated a willingness to jump right into these topics and help bring them across the finish line. So will continue to be appropriate and sympathetic to allowing Jan and Arch to roll off the committee. Though their input has been fantastic over the last year that they contributed to these topics. So I wanted to certainly express my gratitude for their willingness to entertain pretty lengthy conversations and a lot of different perspectives as we solicited feedback on these proposals. So, does anybody else have any comments or questions about that? So can I get a motion to accept the resignations of Marge Sweeney and Jen Olson from the Ordinance Advisory Committee?
So moved.
All in favor?
Right.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks.
With great gratitude
Appreciate.
and appreciation. The next item up is to reappoint Tobin Anderson to the Historic Preservation Commission, and this is one that Meadow brought up. They had noted that there seemed to be some incongruity in the appointment or reappointment of Tobin to the seat. So we just wanted to kind of clean that up by reappointing.
He hadn't applied or something?
Well, it wasn't exactly clear whether or not the term was up relative to when it was originally appointed and how it was noted on the website. And so Matt just kind of noticed the incongruity, and to clean that up, we'll make sure that the term matches the appointment date.
Excellent.
So this is kind of an odd anomaly, and Tobin's, I'm assuming, interested in continuing to serve in the role.
Yeah, he says so here.
Yeah, so, can I entertain a motion to, reappoint? Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. And thank you, Tobin. Thank you, Madeline, for, bringing that up. Next up is the approval of minutes from the July 13th select board meeting, which were added to the shared drive, and flavors had the opportunity to review those. Would anybody like to comment on them before the table? No? And motion to accept those minutes. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right along.
Board orders. So everybody had the opportunity to review the board orders that were posted to the share drive. Are there any questions or comments on the board orders?
There was some waiting because of.
Yes, there were 2 checks that didn't get signed while I was away. So they went through the bank, but then they were credited back. So just reissuing those checks.
Can I get a motion to approve and sign the board orders as posted to the share drive?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Approve and sign the stipulation regarding the Comcast appeal for the BCA.
This was an explanation about.
This one's a little different. So
You lost me.
Comcast, like other utilities, owns property in town, the poles that they install. And they pay property taxes on those poles. The value of that property is set by the state. The Comcast is not accepting that valuation, they're appealing it, and they are to go through the town, but the town has no say in that property valuation. So this is a workaround to bypass that process. So they don't have to appeal to the Board of Civil Authority, they can just go straight to the state.
We tell them to go ahead.
Yes. And I guess this is common.
Okay. So this is it looks like a form that was, it's like a form that we're filling out, stipulations. And it's got blanks and we're filling arrangements. So it's standard thing.
Yes, it is.
So did they give it to us, Comcast?
I believe I got this from John McCullough.
Okay.
Do
Okay,
you remember? John certainly is the one that explained it to me.
okay.
And the version I have is filled out with, I think it's John's handwriting. Comcast is the taxpayer, Calais is the town.
Right, that's what you gave us.
Okay. Yeah, so then we just need dated and signed by one of you. Or somebody from that, see John, right?
I see. So this didn't require talking to any lawyers or anything, this is just a thing you do.
I did not review this with an attorney. The way it was presented to me was just pro
What
forma.
we do, okay. Yes, go to the state now.
Does anybody have a preference on who's authorized to sign the document?
They haven't said that yet, no.
Does anybody want to mandate that Ari and I rock, paper, scissors to see who's gonna sign it? I'm happy to entertain a motion that I or Ari are authorized to sign the appeal.
Second,
Appeal, not deal. We're not dealing with it.
stipulations.
Anybody want to second that? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Carter.
Yes.
Journal entries, approve and sign, June 2026 journal entries as posted to the share drive. Again, these are, modifications to the general ledger that we're reviewing. So we had the opportunity to review those. Do you have any questions about them?
This is an accounting thing, moving from one.
Yeah, it's double entry accounting. There's always at least 2 entries, right? And they have to balance out. And the main source of these are revenues that don't, that get deposited directly in our bank. So we're not processing through our accounts payable or our accounts, or our cash receipts module. So there are things that I do alone, which is why it's a good idea for someone in a position of authority to review these.
And where they go.
Some, like, there's usually a weekly HRA activity.
Yeah.
That's an automatic draw by MVP from our bank for, HRA, health reimbursement arrangement, reimbursement. And then at the end of the month, there's a series of interest. We get bank interest, bank account interest and investment income from our 2 investment funds. So that's what goes going on there.
Can I get a motion to approve and sign the June 2026 journal ledger entries?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kari. Bearing those. The next up is reports. First on the list is financial reports. So we have the unaudited FY 2026 statements.
So happy to report that combined general government and highway department revenues and expenditures were 118% of budget. And in fact, we ended up with a little surplus of $13,000. And this was all thanks to the, mainly thanks to the general government side, which had a surplus of 82,000, while the highway had a deficit of 69. However, that deficit of 69 can be mostly accounted for by the unbudgeted county road repaving project. The net expense of that, less the grant, was 66,000 something. So that we factor that in, the highway department only had a deficit of $2,600, which I'm thrilled to report.
Yes.
It didn't look possible that we'd be that close at one point in the year, but I think we did a good job of controlling expenses. Ended the year with a general fund balance of 595,000. That will be adjusted down at least $69,000 to zero out the highway fund, because that's the practice, is it ends at zero, whether there's a positive or negative number there. And then once the audit's complete, we can have another conversation about the general fund balance. So for our policy, it's 15% of budget is what our target is for that. And that would be about 350,000. So it looks like we're going to exceed that by a fair amount. And that provides opportunity if, we want to think about spending it. My recommendation would always be to put it towards one-time uses, like projects, like grant projects and things like that. Or new bridges.
Yeah. Just a quick question on what you were saying about the unbudgeted paving project.
Yes,
Didn't we also have a grant?
We did.
Would that also be in the revenue?
no, I'm taking that into account when I say that the net expense of that project was 66,000.
That's less. Right, but why isn't it showing that way if we got more revenue from the grant?
Well, that's part of why highway department revenues were so high. They're much greater than budget.
It's an annoying counting thing because the expenses are somewhere different than the incomes. And so that project looked like it exceeded its budget by 159% because we don't apply the grant income directly to the cost. So it's really, I hate it. I hate it on all of the other boards that I sit on too. And there's never a clean way to do it because you always have like income somewhere else.
That's one of my questions for the auditors this round. Is there a better way to account for that? So just for the presentation. At the year end, like what's going on here? It's not so clear.
Well, I'm impressed that 1% is pretty good.
Yeah, good.
Any other questions about the year-end financial statements?
Just a note that when we do talk about the reserve fund,
The fund balance.
fund balance, that we want to talk about, as we discussed in town meeting, how it's invested.
Yes.
Still on our list.
Yeah, our policy calls for us to consider it and then publicize. Which I think, I would say let's do that at town meeting again. That actually was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
But, once we know what the number is, then we can talk specifics about. Do we want to allocate some portion of that
Yeah.
to something specific?
Um. Circling back to the zeroing out of using the fund balance to zero out the highway department. And I think when we have done that presentation in the last couple of years about how we've tracked, we're not including that zeroing out. I mean, you have to zero it out. It's coming out of the fund balance anyway.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay the things that you've overspent for, but,
Yeah.
is there any need, I guess, to add a summary somehow that we're tracking, like, I guess we're always going to see what our overage is going, our year-to-year overages.
Yeah, that'll be reflected in the.
It's gonna be reflected in the
In
report anyway.
In the final statements, there'll be a transfer out of the general fund and into the highway fund. You know, when you made the decision to fund the project, you could have at that time done a transfer. If you had known the number that it ended up being, you wouldn't have known that, but you could have estimated and we could have said, we're actually authorizing the transfer of X dollars to the highway fund for this project.
Yeah.
We're just waited to do that.
Yeah.
But that was always the expectation, is that it would come out of that general fund balance, and which is totally appropriate. That's exactly the.
Yeah, no, I definitely remember that conversation, and I think that's totally appropriate. Anyway, but it's hot there. I'm not thinking clearly. Thank you, Karen. Do we need to formally accept that? No,
I don't think so.
I don't know. Town clerk update.
We lost Keegan.
We lost Tegan.
Tomorrow's the last day for, absentee ballots.
Yeah.
For the, primary election and the.
We're requesting them, right?
To be mailed.
Be mailed, that's right.
You can still come to the town clerk's
Still
office.
go to the town clerk's office and vote, please do. And, I think Deegan is gonna put a front porch forum post out about that.
Okay.
And yeah, we've been issuing ballots pretty regularly, in the office, and we've had a fair amount of people coming to the office to vote, so it's really great to see that. Website is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on there today.
Yeah.
Looks nice.
That's good, thanks.
Super impressive.
Seems faster too.
Yeah,
Is it?
it is loading faster. It's a pretty snappy, pretty snappy host. And, the way that it caches pages is fine. But, yeah,
Well, thank you.
you bet.
I appreciate you taking on that project, Meadow, and seeing it through. It's a really awesome resource. I'm so happy that we have more flexibility and we modify it and leverage it. So that's a huge advantage. Just curious, we start going back to the vote. Does the town clerk's office track votes coming in? Obviously, they can't be counted early, but the number of votes relative to the registration list, to have a sense of like how many outstanding folks could potentially show up on election day.
Yeah, I mean, Keegan does that math, at least as far as I am aware. You know, I'm like fairly new to this. We obviously are logging all of this information, like anytime the ballot moves out of the office or back into the office, it's recorded in the electronic management system. But, you know, in terms of the numbers, I know that Tegan takes that into account when we're prepping the checklist. It just like gives us a sense of what to expect and what we're prepping for election day. But if you have a specific request or something that I can pass.
No, I was just kind of curious. No, thank you. Town administrator.
Yeah, notice we're almost back on track schedule wise, but I'm gonna take a few minutes here.